Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We are going to Dallas, Texas. Our guest was a Division III NCAA champion in 2011 for Merchant Marine Academy. Daniel Twito, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. It's been a while. It's kind of fun to talk about, the college career in 2011.
Well, we can talk more than your college career because you went to Cedar Falls High School, placed 3 times, sixth, third, and third, but you were homeschooled. What was that like being in the wrestling space, being homeschooled, and then being part of a high school system?
Yeah, it was good. It's kind of fun with COVID and everything happening. Everybody's having to homeschool their kids now, so it's funny for me to watch. But in high school, being at Cedar Falls and being homeschooled. So I was actually homeschooled up until 9th grade. And then in 10th grade, I started going to the public school. So really the homeschooling was more, I guess junior high at Holmes Junior High. And I was dual enroll. I didn't take any classes there, but I played all the sports, wrestling and football and I guess it was club soccer, but basketball and stuff like that. So then, getting in it was a little bit of a transition, going from homeschool to Cedar Falls. I think the biggest transition was learning how to stare at a wall for 8 hours and not learn anything. Cedar Falls it's a great public school, actually, but you're just, when you're homeschooled, you just do the work. That's it. You get the assignment and then you do the work. When you go to public school, then you go to class, you learn, and then you go home and you do the assignment, you do the work. So it's just a different setup. But wrestling was definitely a good outlet, kind of when I was in high school, just to blow the steam off. And all the guys that I played soccer with, and a lot of the guys I played football with, a lot of those guys were the same guys that we were in the wrestling room with. So there was some pretty good teamwork and stuff like that. And, overall, I had Jay Llewellyn as my coach for those 4 years. And you walk in the Cedar Falls wrestling room, and up on the wall is the state place winners, like, every guy that ever placed at state for Cedar Falls High School. So you kind of just, have this feeling or dream of like, getting up on that wall somehow. And so it's kind of fun, that sophomore year and all 3 years, I think something similar happened or, whatever else. And I ran into, there's a lot of good wrestlers, a lot of guys that I give credit to that I wrestled in, my sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school and at state that, went on and were very good. I can't remember them all, but there's a guy from Oskaloosa, so I'm drawing a blank. He was a 3-time, he won state 3 times and beat Cody Pujol in the finals my junior year. I'm trying to remember his name. He had a couple brothers, but either way, the one year he didn't win was a year he like broke his jaw or something. But a bunch of good guys. So my going to I guess I got to the semifinals in all three times I went to state. I got to the semifinals and something I just didn't quite make it past, and then worked my way back, my junior and senior year. So that was kind of fun, but a little disheartening because you always want it up at the top, and I'm competitive, so that was the one. That's it. It was good though. I enjoyed it.
As we're thinking about programs that get dropped, your dad wrestled for Valparaiso, which is weird to say because you wouldn't even think of them having a wrestling program, but I'm assuming he was the one that imparted wrestling into your life.
Yeah, that's for sure. We always talk. I guess when we talk about wrestling, he was like a conference champion. I think maybe 3 or 4 years out of 4. So Valparaiso in Indiana is pretty tough. Wrestling, I'm assuming back in the 70s and 80s, but there wasn't anything after the conference tournament. So, he didn't really say anything about, nationals or anything like that. So, I just, had never had anything really to compare it to, but he loved wrestling and we would always wrestle when we were younger and just kind of goof around. And he did all sorts of crazy stuff. He'll tell you, when we're real young, he put us on beach volleyballs or not beach, I guess the beach balls, like the inflatable ones. I mean, we're like 1 year old, half-year old, and he like roll us around on the beach volleyball, and he'd be telling people, yeah, I'm working on their balance. I'm working on their balance. You know, you go left and they kind of raise their arms up. So that was for sure my dad's influence on the wrestling scene. And then, of course, in 7th grade, my mom kind of, you know, told my older brother, hey, you're going to do every sport, and then, you know, after the season or after the year, then you can maybe, you know, decide which sports you wanted to play. And he wanted to, you know, play basketball, I think, until, you know, he went through the wrestling season. Then when he went through the basketball season, which in 7th grade you could do both, and he stuck with wrestling. And so that was another kind of big factor for me, being a younger brother and impressionable. Of course, I was like, well, you know, my older brother's doing wrestling, and, you know, so I started to get more involved. And then I think I started maybe at a little earlier age going to the local tournaments, and, you know, the Dan Gable tournament I probably went to like 5 or 6 times, you know, like all growing up and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it got started. And yeah, my dad was definitely a big influence on, you know, you know, I don't know if he ever let me win ever in the wrestling, you know, in the living room. We'd just be goofing around. He's just so competitive. So, you know, we'd be goofing around. So I think that I got my competitive nature probably a little from my dad, definitely my mom too, but, you know, for the wrestling thing. So it kind of made me a competitor, you know, growing up for sure.
What was the draw to the Merchant Marine Academy out on the East Coast?
I remember it. They sent me a letter, you know, and I didn't get a ton of letters, you know, recruiting letters. I got a few that that I can remember. You know, I think Wartburg and maybe Luther, some different D3 programs, and Mankato State up in Minnesota. You know, some people had sent letters, and one of the letters came from the Merchant Marine Academy, and there was a guy, 1965 graduate, Charlie Hill, and he got really involved that year in recruiting, and so he was sending out these letters, and this letter was like 14 or 15 bullet points of, you know, it was truthful stuff, but it was like propaganda, you know, like you could do all this with your life, really, you could do all this with your life if you come to the Merchant Marine. And I brought it home, and I told my mom, I said, if it's half that true, I'll go. You know, that sounds pretty good. So we started to go through the applying process, which is, you know, this long drawn out process. You have to get a state representative to, you know, nominate you or recommend you to go there. And that was kind of interesting. I walked in, and, you know, they did the interview process, and at the end they said, you only checked, you know, the Merchant Marine Academy, you know, that's your first choice. You know, you're from Iowa. Like, you know, I figure like Army or Air Force or, you know, Navy, you know, one of these other ones would maybe be your first choice. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could put, you know, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll put Navy in there too, just in case. So that was like my backup, but they were kind of laughing. I'm from Iowa. There aren't a lot of people that are searching out to go to the Merchant Marine Academy. And, you know, it's probably just a little luck that I found out about the place from Iowa. I mean, you know, I wouldn't have had any clue in the world. And, you know, for me, kind of a military setup, and, you know, the rigorous training was, you know, being the wrestler I am, it was a good setup for me. You know, I needed a little bit of, you know, I didn't need a little bit of like structure in my life. You know, I was always running around as a kid, just, you know, kind of being a rebel and stuff like that. So it's probably good, straighten me up a little bit.
So it's interesting how it works out. You don't place at 3 nationals in a row, and then your senior year, you come back to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is an hour south of Cedar Falls, where you're from, and you win it in a slugfest in the finals. Kind of stranger than fiction in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild. I think, especially for the Merchant Marine Academy, you know, and this is, I guess, as good a time as any to get into it, but the timeline of your wrestling career at Merchant Marine is a little tough. You know, your first year, you come in and you're in a regimental environment where it's, you know, you're wearing uniform every day, it's military, and you're trying to balance, you know, a rigorous school setup. I mean, it's like trimester scheduling with, as an engineer, it was like 19 credits a trimester, and they're all set up your first year. So it's, you know, everybody takes the same ones for the first 2 trimesters. And so you're trying to balance that with the military thing. I mean, you know, you've got a lot of the upperclassmen, they're all yelling at you. You're kind of like lower than dirt for I don't know, at least 6 months or so. I don't remember how long it lasts, but you're kind of lower than dirt. So then you're trying to balance, try to balance wrestling with the pressure of the regiment system, plus your schooling and stuff like that. I remember I was taking 4 labs during wrestling season my first year. So it was like, and every week would have a new lab due. So it was like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It was a lab due every single week. So there's a lot going on top of, just trying to wrestle, so and then so that's your first year, you're trying to figure it all out, and wrestling's you don't have a lot of freedom in your first year. So wrestling's like the place where you get to, kind of be yourself a little and, goof off a little more, kind of just be part of a team where you're the upperclassmen on the wrestling team. Of course, they're not, it's the regiment stops at the door. You get in the restroom and, it doesn't matter. It's just wrestling. So you just, if you're wrestling somebody and you beat them up, it's like, nobody's going to make you get on your face and do push-ups because you beat them up in the wrestling room. So it's kind of, it's kind of fun. And then my class that walked in the door, I mean, we had some studs. I mean, we had some guys walk in that room that were, really, really good wrestlers. That was really fun for my class specifically. The guy recruiting us, he did a great job. And we had guys from Massachusetts that you wouldn't think, Massachusetts is a great wrestling state, but the guy was placed second at senior nationals, and had some guy, a couple guys from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, Minnesota state champ, North Carolina state champ. I mean, we walked in the room and I was like, kind of looked around and my first year, our freshman year there was 6 guys that were freshmen starting, and only 10 spots, so that was, we kind of walked in and, there's a little bit of animosity, the upperclassmen just, because Merchant Marine, we're not known for, necessarily our wrestling, but so, there isn't a huge expectation that you're going to have this huge recruit class, but, kind of based on the stats, I think Flow Wrestling or whoever ranks in incoming classes ranked us like number 3 or 2 or 3, like, in total of the, and usually it's like Augsburg and Wartburg, of course, for D3, and, Wisconsin lacrosse, I think, has got a pretty good team, and some other schools, but that's kind of the 2 that have the best recruited classes. So, yeah, it was pretty fun for, for us to walk in and just kind of immediately, and of course, we're trying to figure out the pecking order ourselves. We're all walking in and, you're always asking the question, like, who's really here who's the stud and who's the guy who just tells you they won, hey, yeah, I went to state 3 times or 4 times, and, different. It could mean nothing. I mean, there was plenty of guys that didn't last very long. Honestly, they came in and they thought they were just going to tear it up, and they realized quick they were number 2 or 3 in the lineup, and they're like, well, there's no point for me to be here. This guy's going to be here as long as I am, so I'm never gonna start. So we had a couple of guys just go and join like the sailing team or something like that. It was always fun fun, I guess. It wasn't a big room anyway, so we needed the extra space really. But so that was a freshman, first year, and then and the other thing, like, your sophomore and junior, you go out to sea, so you go on a commercial ship for 300 days. So you go to sea right after your first year. So you go to sea for the summer and the first trimester. So imagine you're out at sea for 100 days, 120 days. I mean, the ship might have a gym, might not have a gym. Hopefully you're on a ship that has a gym. But again, you're out there by yourself, maybe one other sea partner that, you might go with a wrestler, you might not. And, so you kind of have to be like pretty disciplined. Typically you're, at other school, you might have, a whole summer that you're working out, that you're like doing, training and, tournaments and, maybe some freestyle or whatever else. And, we're working as an engineer on the middle of the ocean, and working a 12-hour day, or, sea projects on top of that. You might, normally you get a workout in. Man, we're pretty, the guy that I went out with we were pretty serious. So we got workouts in, but for a lot of guys, they came back. I remember one guy came back, he wrestled maybe 133 the first year. He came back like 180, like 190. He came back like the Michelin man. I mean, he's a short guy. I was like, what happened, dude? Like you blew up, I mean, all the food he could eat, and, I don't think he worked out a day while he's out there, but came back. He had to take a think he sat out a year because he just lost, you know, and you know, he's a pretty big stud. And so that was kind of, you know, I mean, that can happen. You know, guys come back from sea and they're not ready. They're not ready. So that happens 120 days the first time you go out, or 100 days, something like that. And then the second time you go out, it's about 200 days. So you have a wrestling season. Right after that, you go back to sea for 200 days, you know, and, you know, you get like some time off here and there. But yeah, it's pretty intense, you know, and you're trying to figure it out too. You're at sea. There's a new experience. You're going to all these different countries and you know, experiencing the world for the first time and kind of seeing, you know, what's out there. And, you know, so there's a lot going on, but, you know, and you come back a lot of guys come back from sea the first time and they're like, they hang it up. They're like, why? I don't need to wrestle anymore. So, you know, you really have to have, you know, some sort of reason, you know, knowing that, you know, you're going to be an engineer after you graduate, or you're going to be working on ships after you graduate. You think a lot of guys reevaluate, you know, whether wrestling and the demands of it are something they want to even, you know, they want to do. A lot of guys come back from sea and quit and don't come back really, or, you know, it happens. We got guys quit, come back, quit again. I mean, you know, there's a lot of like emotional, you know, a lot of demands going on, of course, that are just totally different from another program. You know, a lot of guys get burnt out in other programs. You know, they're working out constantly and you know, doing 2 days all year round and stuff like that. But, you know, immersion marine is more, it wasn't even necessarily about burning out too much. It was just like coming back and realizing, you know, you didn't want to wrestle anymore, or like it wasn't that important to you, or whatever else. And I definitely had, you know, my fair share of, you know, experience where I was like, you know, what am I doing? Why, you know, just, you know, especially, you know, 2-3 years getting the nationals and then not having anything, you know, not placing or not coming out on top, or, you know, in my junior year, I might've been in better shape my junior year than I was my senior year. You know, I laughed about it. Like, I was in pretty good shape my junior year. I mean, I was going for it. I was, you know, my head, I was, you know, that was kind of like, that was my year. I was, you know, I don't know if you remember Eric Wigline, 2-time national champ from Wartburg, but he had come into the Cedar Falls High School wrestling room, and we always used to joke. He's a little bit of a freak. You know, we always used to joke that if you ripped his arms off, you'd see wires coming out, because the guy just, I mean, you know, I don't remember exactly how old he was when he was coming in, but he had a tank. Like, he just wouldn't stop. He just had no quit. He would just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. We'd be doing, you know, kind of like, you know, takedown stays out. And me and like 2 other guys would be a group of 4 with him in there. And we would just go out there. And the goal wasn't even to take him down. It was just to beat on as hard as you possibly could so you could slow him down, because he enjoyed it. He loved it. He just was, you know, wrestling, and he's, you know, he's a good guy, but he was a 2-time national champion. So, you know, I don't know, in my head, I guess I was, you know, always trying to become a 2-time national champion. And that was kind of the thought in my head. So I thought, okay, you know, the first 2 years didn't happen, you know, kind of, you know, my you know, I won't tell you all the stories, but my second year, so my sophomore year, my brother got married the weekend before, it was the weekend before nationals. And so I was going to fly out of, I was flying out of Cincinnati on a Sunday, and our national tournament started on Wednesday, and I had finals that week. So I also had finals for the second trimester finishing up. And we got to the airport, and there was a snowstorm. So I got picked back up. The flight was delayed, canceled, whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have 6 finals, and I'm not going to get back to school until Monday at, you know, I don't know what time anymore. Like, I was trying to line them up all on Monday, you know, I'm emailing all my teachers. And so Monday, I fly back to school, and one of my teachers came in early. Like, he just came in for me to take the final at, you know, 6 p.m. at night. He just came in and let me take the final. I hadn't, you know, of course, the conference tournament was maybe the weekend before my brother's wedding. I was the best man at my brother's wedding. And then I took 6 finals, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So 6 p.m., you know, Monday night, I took a final. I took 3 on Tuesday, and I took 2 on Wednesday. And needless to say, I did horribly bad on my finals. I wasn't prepared at all. But so I walk into the tournament Wednesday at noon, and hindsight's always 20/20. I should have been working out and kind of balancing my my time to study for the finals and keep my weight down. But I walked into the gym, and I was like 11 pounds overweight my Wednesday, and of course we're weighing it Thursday morning, and so that was tough. That was not the best planning, and my coach, I think, was pretty upset with my mom for even planning my brother's wedding the weekend before nationals. But that was kind of what happened my sophomore year. That didn't work out very well. I was super dehydrated, and I could barely lift my arms by, I walked up, I think I lost my first match, and I walked up to walked upstairs where all the fans were, my parents and stuff. And I was like, man, if I can't beat that guy, I'm in trouble. Cause that guy, in my opinion, was like, the guy that I should have been beating. And so, yeah, that was a hard one. That was a hard one. So my junior year, I think I came back thinking that, okay, I'm not going to repeat those mistakes. And I came back my junior year in like the best shape of my life, and was ready to get after it. And then kind of fate would have it. I wrestled a guy that I actually grew up wrestling in the Cedar Valley. I think he went to Don Bosco, and from Wartburg, and in the quarterfinals. Just, my style of wrestling is, heavy hands. I always was tough, heavy hands, and then like just, drove the pace. And, kind of, I won't compare myself to anybody, but everybody knows what that kind of style looks like, I guess. Just like, I'm not the slickest wrestler, and I wasn't like always on the attack. I wish I was more on the attack. I'd like to say I was. My offense was pretty good. I don't know. I was a little scared to take shots, and so I would kind of, matches would kind of go long and stuff. And I probably let this guy, stay in it for too long. But I got dinged for stalling in the third period. He was taking these like, half shots, and I was walking him off the mat. So I was walking him off the mat going forward, and kind of faking shots. And I was already up. I'd already scored, and I was up by 1. And so, I didn't really need to do anything. And, but I was still in it, and I was pushing him off the mat. I kept on running him off the mat. And, they kept on saying that I was blocking him, like blocking his shots. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm blocking his shots. And I was taking shots myself. But either way, the ref was from Wartburg alum, and the wrestlers from Wartburg. And so either way, I got hit for 2 stalling calls, and it went into overtime. And, when you leave it to chance like that, you're just looking for a disaster. So he ended up taking me down. It was, just, of course, you're just shocked that even happened. But I got taken down, so I lost that match. And, I don't know. I just couldn't. I didn't come back from it. I went and I tried to come back, and it was a guy who was pretty tough on the backside. I mean, the national tournament, it's not any easier going on the backside than it is on the front side. If you lose your match on the front side, it's like, oh great, now I got the guy that won nationals last year or whatever. I mean, it's not like it's any easier, or sometimes it's not any easier. But this guy that I wrestled on the backside, I'd wrestled him 2 times earlier in the year, and I beat him both times. And sometimes it happens. It's tough to beat a kid 3 times. And, and I was trying to come back mentally, but, I got beat again. So that was like, that was like 3 years in a row, 3 years making the national tournament, and then 3 years of not getting what I wanted. I mean, I don't know any wrestler who thinks in their head that they don't want to be a national champion, but, for me, I thought, I was thinking in my head it was attainable. Like I had beaten, I had beaten most of the guys that were, competing at the top level. I had already kind of done that. So I felt like, no problem. I don't remember getting seeded in my junior year, but, I never cared about seeding too much anyways. But, that was kind of it. So then my senior year, and this is like, anybody who's wrestled probably has had at least a moment or two of doubt. I don't know, frustration, thinking like, why am I beating myself against, why am I putting myself through this when, I'm not getting the results I want. I mean, anybody who's been through wrestling knows or has felt that feeling probably of, whether they were a starter all 4 years and didn't make it to the state tournament or maybe they were just trying to break the varsity lineup. I mean, whatever their goals were, if they weren't like achieving that or maybe they had, I mean, I know a situation where maybe starters for 2 years and some guy came in as a freshman and took their spot. I mean, that happens. So, my senior year I was working through some of those, like trying to figure out if I was committed to a season of wrestling, one last season. And I was going back and forth, and I think, some other buddies in the room were, also feeling a little bit of, I don't know, fatigue or, 4 years and stuff like that. And so either way, it was MLK weekend. I remember it pretty vividly, but MLK weekend, and sorry, I'm just rambling. I mean, just telling whatever, but I guess it's fun for me to remember this too. But MLK weekend, I was thinking, honestly, I was thinking my senior year, I was like, am I going to finish? Am I going to finish my career? Am I going to actually, am I going to keep wrestling, or am I committed to this, or am I just going to quit? I mean, my options were pretty polarizing, and I remember I talked to a few people, and of course my dad's like, of course you can't quit. You got a younger brother and sister watching you, and so there's a little pressure there. But for however it worked out, I had a couple of days in a row where I was in a room and my head wasn't in it, and so I kind of walked out of the room, and I was just trying to figure out what I really wanted, what if I was going to kind of happen or just how I felt even. And MLK weekend, I went on a skiing trip with some friends, and we went to this place up in Hunter Mountain in New York, and we were kind of just hanging out for the weekend, and it kind of gave me some time to think about it a little bit. And it's pretty late in the season. I mean, mid-January, and so thinking nationals are in March, but I kind of came away from the weekend just saying, okay, this is my final season, 8 weeks or 6 weeks, 6 weeks till conference. I think it was like 7 or 8 weeks till nationals, something like that, or maybe even less. But I thought, okay, what's 6 weeks? What's 8 weeks or whatever. It's just, I mean, it's only 8 weeks. You can do anything for 8 weeks. I mean, this is nothing. So kind of made the decision and came back and got a little focused and kind of decided, hey, this is, I'm gonna go for it. Let's make it happen. And so kind of that was the I don't know, inflection point, the moment where I felt like, I was coming back into it. So started a workout probably a little hard, a little more focused. Was doing, I was already doing like 2 days, 3 days, all sorts of crazy stuff. But I was, I think I was just, there's a difference. You can do the motions. A lot of times you can watch guys with, talent, and, I'm not impervious to this, but guys who got a lot of talent or, a lot of potential, but they're just going through the motions. They're not really, they're not really doing the workouts. And I mean, you can always slack off. So it's the only person keeping you accountable is you. You can work out and do the warm up with somebody that is, not going to push you as hard or whatever else. There's always ways to, cut the corners and stuff. So kind of that last 8 weeks, and I didn't cut corners before that either, but, just I guess, took it to the next level. It got pretty intense, and I just started, focusing a lot on what was going to happen like that. So I got to the national tournament, and I was the 8th seed, which meant that I would wrestle the number 1 seed in the second round. And I remember, seeding didn't matter too much to me, but it was kind of almost a relief. I was like, oh, good. Well, once I beat the first seed, then I'll be the first seed. So then, I got to beat him anyway. So, I was kind of glad. And I knew the guy who's from the Northeast too. And I didn't know how he was the first seed anyways. I didn't realize he had beat a lot of people that, I'd wrestled him a couple times before. So I guess that gives you a little bit of comfort. I wrestled him a few times before and beat him every time. And I don't know how the seating works or who's in the room when the coaches are going at it and deciding. But for me, I was like, yeah, perfect. The two buzzsaws that at least in my mind, were on the other side. The two guys that the second and the third seed were, the guys that I was like, oh man, like, I'm sure I'll see one of them in the finals, but we'll get there when we get there. And that was Harrington. I'm trying to think of his first name, but he's from Wartburg, and then Orlando Ponce from Augsburg, and that was who I ended up meeting in the finals. And so Jesse, I think his name is Jesse Harrington, maybe. But anyways, I get to the second round, and the first seed got beat. He got thrown in a headlock in the first round, and so he didn't even show up. And I was like, so now I'm in the second round, and every one of my matches, was reasonably close. They weren't. I wish I was tech falling guys and pinning guys my way to the finals, but every match was pretty close. It's like, a couple, usually a takedown and I just kind of like heavy hand. I just broke them down, and then usually in the third period, I'd take a couple of shots and, get a takedown. And that happened all the way to the finals pretty much, and tough matches. I went into overtime, I got an overtime like in the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and every time we got a little closer, and then the finals was Orlando Ponce, and hopefully I don't know if he's listening, but the funny thing was that the year before, the 165-pound guy, Vinny Renat from our school, was the first time ever national champion for my school. And he wrestled Orlando Ponce in the finals the year before. So can't write this stuff up, really. It's just the craziest story. He was in the finals last year. He got beat as a sophomore. He was in the finals with Vinny, and Vinny beat him. He came back from behind. There's like kind of a fairy tale story in itself. But then the next year, so I wrestle, he drops to 157. So I meet him in the finals, and he was tough. He was super tough. Like he worked extremely hard. He never quit. He was coming at you. He did my style, and I had a few guys that did like, that I ran into that kind of did my style back to me. And so we kind of had a similar style of just like really being physical and being aggressive and being, heavy on the head and stuff like that. So it was kind of a tough battle going back and forth. And there was one shot that, it was the rule. I don't know if they, how the rules are, if they're still this way, but basically like if you kept your foot, it was a cylinder, right? So the cylinder went up and down, and if your foot was over the cylinder but off the mat, you could still get a takedown. And so I took a shot, and I wrapped up on his legs, and we went out of bounds, and it was, in my opinion, clear too. And this is like maybe the second period, and the ref said we went out of bounds. And so, my coach is screaming about this cylinder thing and how, my foot's there. I don't know, but either way, that was kind of, one thing that happened. And then, the other thing is, I would say the best defense against a good shot is to not let them get on your legs. And I failed to do that like 4 or 5 times in the match. I was like Gumby, but he kept on getting on my legs like over and over again, when I shouldn't have been letting him get in my foot up at the end of, regular, like the first period, the second period, in the third. I don't remember how many times, maybe overtime, but he would get my leg up, but he couldn't finish. I got kind of long legs, and, it's one of my, I don't know, just frustrate the heck out of people. There's, you might know a couple wrestlers, but you get in on the legs, and of course that's like 1/10 of the takedown. You get in on the legs, and then, from there it's just a scramble, or maybe they're goofy, or whatever else. I wasn't super goofy in the scrambling, but I was like Gumby. You get on my legs, you get up in the air, you could be doing all these things, and I was pretty comfortable there, really. You had my leg in the air. I felt pretty good, actually. I was I was feeling like, most likely nothing's going to happen. And if anything happens, I'm going to get a takedown or something. It's like, kind of a weird deal. So, it's kind of a, if you went online, you watch the match, it's not the most exciting match. It's a grueling battle of like 11 minutes, double overtime. And, I went on a criteria, basically you ride them out longer and then they ride you out. And, so in the last overtime, it's 30 seconds, each guy goes down. And so I get on top and I get on top and I start riding him, or he goes down first. So he gets up and I lift and return. He gets up, I lift and return, and then he's getting out the front, and then I take a shot and I get on a shot, and the ref was feeling like I was staying down in the ankle for too long. In my mind, it was, just a handful of seconds where I was climbing up the leg and getting to the second leg and stuff. But he was like, he kept on saying work up, and like it felt like only a couple of seconds, and we had drinks after the tournament. We were just laughing at the match, and he was like, you were stalling. I'm like, I was coming up fast, and he was laughing. We were going back and forth, and I told him he should have given me that takedown before. And he told me if you found that video and it showed him, and it showed me taking him down, and it looked like it was legit, he said he'd take that video and he'd, eat his shorts or something like that. It was pretty hilarious. So he was pretty adamant that he made the right call. But, so I wrote him out for, I wrote him out for like 25 seconds or something like that. Or he wrote me out. I got out in like maybe 12 seconds. And then I wrote him out for maybe 20 seconds or 25 seconds. And the time was getting pretty low. And I knew the only chance that he had was like to do some crazy reversal, something or another. So I cut him in the last, 4 seconds of the match. And, I knew the rules, I kind of knew I already won, but my dad is in the stands. Was the criteria, how it works is you get a point if you ride him out longer. And so when I cut him at the very, very end with like 4 seconds left, he lost his mind. He was like, oh no, like, I can't believe, he just blew it. What did he do? And then he saw my hand get raised and he was like, what happened? How did that, wait, hold on. So it's just funny. There's, my cousin's like, he was videotaping it on his phone, and how it had, he was videotaping it, somehow it dropped out of his hand and fell on the ground facing up. And you got this video of my dad just, going down in the seat, and you got a perfect video of him just like, all the anguish of like, thinking I lost the match in this one moment is hilarious. So, but yeah, that was kind of it. And, of course everybody dreams of going out on top. So, that was kind of it. So got my first place. Got my first place victory, got to hang my hat on it. And, everyone wishes they had more than that, right? I wish I would have had 2 or 3, but I'm, it was fun. And being from Merchant Marine Academy, I think that, sometimes the underdog, it's fun to watch the underdog win, or watch the guy who, you may not think should win, or somebody from a small school, or, I graduated 206 kids in my class, and so it's kind of fun to see the underdog come out in the end. So there's a lot of fans in the stands, just, give me some love, even a lot of fans from other schools and stuff. So that's kind of fun.
Are you glad you went to Merchant Marines?
Yeah, definitely. The opportunities, that I first saw in that letter of propaganda were actually pretty true. There was a lot of opportunity after you left, and there's 206 kids, and it's not it's not a technical like fraternity, but you kind of have this fraternity, and really, like, anybody who went to Kings Point, when you get out, will do, give you the shirt off their back to help you out, or do whatever they can to make you succeed when you get out. So there's definitely like a pretty strong brotherhood and camaraderie, whether, even, wrestling, your regiment, your class, there's a lot of camaraderie that you get, and anybody who's in the military too can kind of get that, kind of knows what that feeling is like, where you get that, that brotherhood, or that, you just have some shared experiences that, you don't get other places. Yeah, definitely a good experience. And, you get to see the world too, for a guy going to Merchant Marine from Iowa. Like, I think I I think I went to like 20 countries in those 4 years on a ship. I would never dream of that, really. I barely knew what I was getting myself into, honestly, when I went, but it's really, you don't know. You just, merchant marine is something you just don't know about, especially if you're from Iowa. So, then you get there and then you start to figure out slowly and then you get shipped off the sea and stuff like that. But it's overall it's a great experience, and it really sets you up, for the future too. I mean, it sets you up for success in the future. Coming out of school, you usually have a job and stuff like that. So it's a good setup.